Ambassador Elena Vasquez had never seen anything so beautiful and so cold at the same time. The council chambers stretched before her like a cathedral made of living crystal, its walls pulsing with soft blue light that seemed to breathe with the heartbeat of 1,000 civilizations. She stood on a platform barely 10 feet wide, surrounded by the towering figures of beings who had mastered space travel when humanity was still learning to make fire. 300 years of work had led to this moment. 300 years since humanity had first detected the signals from deep space and realized they were not alone. 300 years of building, learning, struggling, and finally reaching out to join the galactic community behind her. Through the vast windows of Nexus Prime, she could see the ships of 100 species drifting past like glowing fish in an infinite ocean. Her own vessel, the diplomatic cruiser Hope of Earth, looked small and crude among them, like a wooden raft floating beside gleaming yachts. But Elena did not feel small. She carried the hopes of 8 billion people in her heart, and that weight gave her strength. The High Arbiter of the Galactic Council floated before her on a platform of hard light. Velketh was a Sindari, a species so ancient that they had shed their physical bodies long ago and existed now as patterns of energy, wrapped in crystalline shells. His form shifted and rippled as he spoke, his voice echoing through the chamber like wind through empty halls. "You may present your petition, human." Elena took a deep breath and began. She spoke of Earth, of its blue oceans and green forests, of the creatures that swam and flew and walked upon its surface. She spoke of humanity's journey from caves to cities, from campfires to fusion reactors, from wooden boats to starships. She spoke of their dreams and their hopes, their art and their science, their failures and their triumphs, and then she spoke of what they wanted. "We ask for admission to the Galactic Compact," she said, her voice steady and clear. "We ask for trade agreements that will allow our people to grow and prosper alongside yours. We ask for mutual defense provisions that will protect all our worlds from those who would do us harm." She paused, and her voice grew more urgent. "And most importantly, we ask for protection for our colony on Kepler 442b. 400,000 of our people live there. Families and children who have built homes and planted gardens on a world they now call their own. But that world sits near the border of Dominion space, and the Dominion has made no secret of their intentions." The chamber was silent. Elena could feel the eyes of 1,000 delegates upon her. Beings of scales and feathers, of tentacles and wings, of forms she could not even describe. Some looked curious, others bored, and a few seemed almost sympathetic, but most simply looked through her, as if she were not even there. High Arbiter Velkith's form flickered, and Elena could not tell if it was a sign of thought or impatience. "The Council has reviewed your petition," he said at last. "We have examined your species, your technology, your history, and your potential." Elena felt hope rise in her chest. "And?" she asked. "Humanity is noted." The words fell like stones into still water. "Noted?" Elena repeated. "What does that mean?" "It means your existence has been recorded in our archives. It means you may continue to develop as you see fit. It means the Council wishes you well in your endeavors." Elena's hands clenched at her sides. "And our colony? Our request for protection?" Velkith's form shifted, and something that might have been contempt rippled through his crystalline shell. "The colony of Kepler 442b lies outside our jurisdiction. The world was not claimed by any compact member, and your people settled there without our permission. We have no obligation to defend it. The Dominion will destroy them," Elena said, fighting to keep her voice calm. "They have already begun massing ships at the edge of the system. They broadcast their plans openly because they know no one will stop them. That is not the Council's concern. 400,000 people will die. Then they should not have settled where they do not belong. The words hung in the air like poison. Elena stared at the High Arbiter, searching for some sign of mercy, some hint of compassion, some spark of the basic decency that she had believed must exist in all intelligent beings. She found nothing. "We came here in peace," she said quietly. "We came with open hands and open hearts. We asked for nothing but a chance to prove ourselves, to contribute to your civilization, to be part of something greater than ourselves." She stepped forward, and her voice rose. "We did not ask for charity. We did not demand special treatment. We simply asked to be heard, to be considered, to be given the same chance that every species in this chamber was given when they first reached for the stars." The council remained silent. "And this is your answer?" Elena continued. "You will let our children burn because we settled on a world you did not claim. You will watch our people die because the paperwork was not filed correctly." Velkith's form pulsed with cold light. "The council's decision is final. Your petition has been archived. This session is adjourned." One by one, the platforms holding the delegates began to drift away. The crystal walls dimmed. The vast chamber that had seemed so full of life moments before now felt empty and dead. Elena stood alone on her small platform, watching the future she had worked for her entire life crumble to dust. A young aide approached her, a boy barely 20 years old with fear in his eyes. "Ambassador," he whispered, "what do we do now?" Elena looked at him, then at the empty chamber, then at the stars beyond the windows. Somewhere out there, 400,000 people were waiting for an answer that would never come. "We go home," she said. "And then?" Elena's jaw tightened, and something hard and cold settled into her heart. "And then we stop asking permission." She turned and walked toward the exit, her footsteps echoing in the silence behind her. The council's archives recorded humanity's petition with the same cold efficiency they had used for a million others. File created, filed, forgotten. But humanity would not be forgotten, and the Galactic Council would soon learn that ignoring Earth's words was the greatest mistake they had ever made. 6 months had passed since Ambassador Vasquez returned to Earth with the Council's answer. 6 months of anger and fear and desperate planning. 6 months of watching the Dominion fleet grow larger at the edge of the Kepler system, their ships multiplying like a cancer spreading through the stars. The people of Kepler 442b had stopped looking at the night sky. They knew what was coming. Admiral Marcus Chun stood before the United Terran Authority, his uniform crisp and his face carved from stone. He had served humanity for 40 years. Had commanded ships in battles that most people had already forgotten, had buried friends and enemies alike in the cold vacuum of space. But he had never faced anything like this. "The situation is simple," he said, his voice filling the underground bunker where Earth's leaders had gathered. "The Dominion has assembled a fleet of 200 warships at the edge of the Kepler system. Their weapons outclass ours by a factor of 10. Their shields can withstand anything we can throw at them. Their ships are faster, stronger, and more numerous than anything we possess." He paused and looked at the faces before him. President Amara Okonkwo sat at the head of the table, her dark eyes steady and calm. Around her were generals and scientists, politicians and engineers, the best minds humanity had to offer. All of them looked tired. All of them looked afraid. "In a straight fight," Chun continued, "we would last approximately 3 hours. Our entire fleet would be destroyed, and the Dominion would proceed to Kepler 442b and burn every man, woman, and child on that world. After that, they would likely turn their attention to Earth itself." The room was silent. "So what do you propose?" President Okonkwo asked. Chen reached into his pocket and pulled out a small data chip. "I propose we stop fighting fair." He inserted the chip into the table's holographic projector, and the air above them filled with blueprints and equations, with diagrams and formulas that seemed to twist and writhe like living things. 300 years ago, when humanity first reached the stars, we encountered a barrier that the Council assured us was impossible to break. They told us that faster-than-light travel required technology we would not develop for another 1,000 years. He smiled. And there was no warmth in it. We developed it in 50. The images shifted, showing a small device no larger than a human fist. Since then, we have continued to push against the boundaries of what the galaxy considers possible. We have asked questions that the elder races stopped asking long ago because they were afraid of the answers. President Okonkwo leaned forward. What kind of questions? The kind that could end civilizations, Chun replied. The kind that the Council banned because they deemed them too dangerous. The kind that no sane species would ever pursue. He met her eyes. But we are not sane. Madam President, we are human, and when our children are threatened, there is nothing we will not do to protect them. The hologram changed again, showing a weapon unlike anything the room had ever seen. It looked almost simple. A slender rod of dark metal surrounded by rings of pulsing light, but the equations floating beside it told a different story. We call it the Prometheus engine, Chun said. It does not destroy matter. It does not burn or explode or tear apart. It simply removes things from existence. One moment an object is there. The next moment, it never was. The room erupted in questions and protests. Scientists shouted about paradoxes and causality. Politicians demanded to know how such a thing was possible. But Chun raised his hand, and silence fell. How it works is not important. What matters is that it does work. We have tested it, we have refined it, and in 3 months, we will have enough of them to equip 17 ships. 17 ships against 200? Someone asked. 17 ships with weapons that can erase a Dominion dreadnought from reality in less than a second. Chun replied. 17 ships crewed by men and women who have trained their entire lives for this moment. 17 ships carrying the fury of a species that was told to sit down and accept extinction. He turned to face the president directly. I am not promising victory. Madam President, I am not promising that any of us will survive. But I am promising that if the Dominion comes for our people, they will pay a price so terrible that the galaxy will remember it for 10,000 years. President Okonkwo was quiet for a long moment. Then she stood and walked to the window. Looking out at the city beyond, millions of people went about their lives below. Unaware of the fate being decided in this room, children played in parks, lovers walked hand in hand. Old men sat on benches and watched the clouds drift by, all of them trusting that someone, somewhere, was keeping them safe. Send word to Kepler 442b, she said at last. Tell them to hold. Tell them we are coming. She turned to face the room, and her eyes burned with a fire that her ancestors would have recognized. And begin production of the Prometheus engines immediately. If the galaxy will not protect our children, then we will do it ourselves. The room burst into motion. Scientists rushed to their labs. Engineers began drawing up construction plans. Generals started coordinating troop movements, and through it all, Admiral Chun stood still, looking at the stars through the bunker's reinforced ceiling. Somewhere out there, 400,000 people were waiting for salvation. He intended to deliver it in fire and fury, in blood and sacrifice, in the desperate, defiant spirit that had carried humanity from caves to stars. Let the Dominion come. Let the Council watch. Let the entire galaxy see what happened when you pushed humanity too far. They were about to learn a lesson they would never forget. Supreme Commander Vrex. Thule stood on the bridge of the Dominion flagship, Eternal Conquest, and watched the blue-green world of Kepler 442b grow larger in the view screen. He was a creature of chitin and malice, his body a twisted mass of armored plates and razor-sharp claws, his mind filled with nothing but hunger and the joy of destruction. For 300 cycles, he had served the Dominion. He had burned. Worlds and slaughtered billions. He had watched civilizations crumble and species vanish into extinction, and he had loved every moment of it. This conquest would be easy. The humans had no fleet capable of defending this world. The Galactic Council had refused to intervene. There was nothing between him and his prey but empty space. All ships, begin bombardment pattern Alpha, he commanded, his voice a wet gurgle that echoed through the bridge. I want the main cities destroyed within the hour. Leave the smaller settlements for the ground troops to enjoy. His weapons officer, a creature of scales and teeth, reached for the firing controls, and nothing happened. Commander, the officer said, confusion clear in his voice. The weapons are not responding. What do you mean not responding? They are locked. The targeting systems refuse to acknowledge our commands. It is as if someone has simply told them to stop working. Rexthol's claws clicked with irritation. Run a diagnostic. I have. There is no malfunction. The systems are functioning perfectly. They simply will not fire. Before Rexthol could respond, his sensor officer let out a sound of alarm. Commander, I am detecting energy signatures. They are appearing from nowhere. 17 vessels. Human design. Rexthol's mandibles spread in what might have been a smile. 17 ships? Against 200? The humans are even more foolish than I thought. All ships, engage with secondary weapons. Crush them. But as he spoke, the human vessels completed their emergence from whatever strange space they had been hiding in. They were small, barely a fraction of the size of his flagship. They looked crude and primitive, like toys built by children, but there was something wrong about them. Something that made even Rexthol's cold blood run colder. The lead ship, bearing the name UTS, remember everything on its hull, turned to face the eternal conquest. A single weapon extended from its bow. A slender rod of dark metal surrounded by rings of pulsing light, and then it fired. Rexthol saw a flash of something that was not light. Something his eyes could not process. Something that seemed to tear at the very fabric of reality, and then the eternal conquest simply stopped existing. There was no explosion, no debris, no dying screams. From 10,000 crew members, one moment, the greatest warship in the Dominion fleet was there. The next moment, it had never been. Rex Thol was gone. His bridge crew was gone. Every memory, every record, every trace of the ship and everyone aboard had been erased from existence. And the human fleet was just getting started for the next 37 minutes. The Dominion fleet experienced something they had never known before. Fear, real, primal. Overwhelming fear. Ships tried to flee and found their engines disabled. Ships tried to fight and found their weapons locked. Ships tried to surrender and received no response. One by one, the human vessels hunted them down one by one. The Prometheus engines spoke their terrible word one by one. Dominion warships vanished from reality as if they had never existed at all on the bridge of the Remember Everything. Admiral Marcus Chen watched the slaughter with cold eyes. He took no pleasure in this. He had never wanted to be a destroyer of worlds, but humanity had been given no choice. And when you gave humanity no choice, humanity made its own. Sir, his communications officer said, we have survivors, escape pods, and damaged ships. Approximately 12,000 Dominion personnel still alive. Chan nodded. Let them go. Sir? Let them go, he repeated. Give them enough power to reach Dominion space. I want them to tell their people what happened here today. I want them to describe what they saw. I want every Dominion world to know that Earth has teeth, and that we are no longer afraid to use them. The officer nodded and began issuing commands. Chun turned to the view screen, where the planet of Kepler 442b hung like a jewel against the stars. 400,000 people down there had been minutes from death. Now they were safe, at least for today. He opened a channel that broadcast on every frequency the galaxy used. knowing that ships and stations across 1,000 light years would receive his words. This is Admiral Marcus Chun of the United Terran Authority to all who can hear. The colony of Kepler 442b is under humanity's protection. Any hostile action against Earth or her people will be met with proportional response. He paused, letting the words sink in. You ignored our words. You told us our children could die. You said it was not your concern. His voice hardened into steel. This is your first and only warning. Earth remembers, and Earth does not forgive. He cut the channel and turned away from the view screen behind him. The survivors of the Dominion fleet limped toward the edge of the system, carrying stories of fire and fury that would spread across the galaxy like wildfire on Kepler 442b. People emerged from shelters and looked up at the sky. They saw not death, but salvation. They saw not the end, but a new beginning, and they knew that humanity would never be ignored again. The Galactic Council had not felt fear in 11,000 years. They felt it now. Emergency sessions were rare events, called perhaps once in a generation to address threats of cosmic significance. This session had been called within hours of the Battle of Kepler 442b. Species that had not spoken to each other in centuries suddenly found themselves united in a single emotion. Terra High Arbiter Velkith floated at the center of the council chamber, his crystalline form flickering with colors that his aides had never seen before around him. 1,000 delegates whispered and argued and demanded explanations that no one could provide. Order, Velkith called out, his voice cracking with strain. The council will have order. The chamber fell silent, but the silence was thick with fear. We have all seen the recordings, Velkith continued. We have all witnessed what the humans did to the Dominion fleet. 200 warships erased from existence in less than an hour. 12,000 survivors left to spread the tale. He paused, gathering himself. The question before us is simple. How do we respond? A delegate from the Merchant Confederation rose, his multiple limbs trembling. We must destroy them before they become too powerful, before they turn those weapons on us. Destroy them how? Another delegate shouted. Did you not see what they did? They have weapons that can unmake reality itself. Our fleets would be gone before they could fire a single shot. Then we negotiate, a third voice offered. We give them what they want, anything to keep those weapons pointed away from us. The chamber erupted into chaos. Delegates screamed accusations at each other. Ancient alliances shattered in moments. Fear made enemies of friends and cowards of heroes, and through it all, Velkith watched with the growing certainty that everything he had built over millennia was crumbling before his eyes. Then the doors of the chamber opened and Admiral Marcus Chun walked in. He wore the same uniform he had worn during the battle, still bearing the faint scent of recycled air and weapon discharge. He walked with the steady pace of a man who had nothing left to prove behind him. No guards or escorts followed. He came alone because he could. The chamber fell silent as he approached the central platform. Delegates who had commanded vast empires found themselves unable to meet his eyes. Species that had conquered star systems shrank back as he passed. Only Velkith held his ground, though even his crystalline form trembled slightly. Admiral Chun, the High Arbiter said, his voice carefully controlled. You were not invited to this session. I know, Chung replied. I came anyway. He stepped onto the platform and stood facing the council, his hands clasped behind his back. 6 months ago, Ambassador Vasquez stood in this very chamber. She asked for nothing but a chance. She offered friendship and cooperation and mutual benefit, and you dismissed her. You told her that 400,000 human lives were not worth your attention. You archived her petition and forgot about it before she had even left the building. His voice echoed through the silent chamber. I am not Ambassador Vasquez. I am not here to ask for anything. I am here to tell you how things are going to be. Valky's form flared with indignation. You dare to threaten the council? I am not threatening anyone, Chum said calmly. I am stating facts. Humanity now possesses weapons that can erase matter from existence. We can end civilizations with a thought. We could, if we chose, turn every world in this galaxy to dust. He paused, letting the words sink in. But we will not, because unlike you, we remember what it is like to be small and afraid and alone. We remember what it is like to look up at the stars and wonder if there is anyone out there who cares whether we live or die. He turned slowly, meeting the eyes of every delegate in the chamber. We did not want this power. We did not seek it. We were forced to create it because you left us no other choice. When our children faced extinction, you told us it was not your problem. When we begged for help, you turned away, so we saved ourselves. In the only way you left open to us. His voice softened, but somehow became even more powerful. Now we stand before you, not as supplicants, but as equals. We could demand tribute. We could conquer your worlds. We could make you kneel before us, as so many species have made others kneel throughout history. He shook his head. We will not. That is not who we are. We ask only what we asked 6 months ago. Recognition, protection, respect. A seat at the table we have earned with blood and fire. The chamber was utterly still. Even the ambient hum of the life support system seemed to fade. What guarantee do we have? Valkith asked at last. What assurance that you will not use these weapons against us? Chun smiled, and for the first time, there was warmth in it. You have our word, and unlike the council, humanity keeps its promises. He turned to leave, then paused. You have one standard cycle to make your decision. After that, we stop waiting. He walked out of the chamber without looking back behind him. The council sat in stunned silence, and for the first time in 11,000 years, they realized that the galaxy had changed forever. The Galactic Compact was amended for the first time in 4,000 years. It happened quietly, without ceremony, without celebration. The council simply voted, and Earth became a full member of the Galactic. Community trade agreements were signed. Defense treaties were ratified. A seat was prepared for humanity's representative in the Great Chamber, where Elena Vasquez had once stood alone and rejected. But the galaxy did not return to normal. It could not. Something fundamental had shifted in the cosmic order, and everyone knew it. On 1,000 worlds, species that have been dismissed and ignored for generations began to look up at the stars with new hope. They sent messages to Earth, encrypted signals that traveled through the dark between stars, asking the same questions over and over. How did you do it? How did you make them listen? How did you turn rejection into triumph and despair into victory? Ambassador Elena Vasquez, reinstated to her position after humanity's rise, answered each message personally. She sat in her office on Luna Base, surrounded by screens showing the faces of beings she had never met, species she had never heard of, civilizations that the council had filed away and forgotten just as they had filed away Earth. We survived, she told them, her voice carrying across light years of empty space. When they told us to die quietly, we refused. When they ignored our words, we found a language they could not ignore. Fire speaks to those who will not listen to reason. She paused, and her expression softened. But fire is only for those who leave no other choice. For everyone else, for you, we offer hands. Not weapons, alliance, not domination. We remember what it is like to be alone in the dark. We will not let others stay there. The messages kept coming. The Vrel of Sigma Draconis, a species of peaceful herbivores who had been denied membership for 300 years because they had nothing to offer the Compact. The mechanical collective of Tau Ceti, artificial beings who had been classified as property rather than persons, the singers of the void. Gas-based life forms who had been told their biology was too different for meaningful communication. All of them reached out to Earth. All of them found welcome, and slowly, piece by piece, a new alliance began to form, not a replacement for the Galactic Compact, but something different, something built on respect rather than power, something founded on the principle that every voice deserved to be heard. No matter how small or strange or new, Admiral Marcus Chun watched it happen from the bridge of the Remember Everything. Now stationed at the edge of Sol System as a permanent guardian of Earth, he had not expected this. He had prepared himself for war, for conquest, for the endless cycle of violence that had defined galactic history since the first species reached the stars. Instead, he found himself witnessing something he had never dared to hope for: peace, real, lasting, meaningful peace. Not the peace of submission, not the peace of fear, but the peace of equals who had chosen to stand together. His communications officer approached with a datapad. "Sir, message from the Council. They want to meet with you and Ambassador Vasquez to discuss the integration of the new alliance into the compact framework." Chun took the datapad and read the message. It was polite, almost friendly, a far cry from the cold dismissal that Elena had received just a year ago. "Tell them we accept," he said. "And tell them we look forward to a productive partnership." The officer nodded and hurried away. Chun turned back to the view screen, where Earth hung blue and beautiful against the darkness. 8 billion people down there, living their lives, raising their children, dreaming their dreams. None of them would ever fully understand what had happened in the past year. They would never know how close they had come to extinction. They would never see the weapons that had saved them, now locked away in vaults deep beneath the lunar surface, and that was as it should be. The burden of that knowledge belonged to those who had carried it. The rest of humanity deserved to live free from that shadow. In the council chamber on Nexus Prime, a new plaque was installed above the human delegation seat. It bore a single phrase, translated into every language the compact used: "We asked nicely first." Some delegates found it amusing, others found it terrifying, but all of them understood the message beneath the words. Humanity had not come to the stars seeking conquest or glory. They had come seeking connection, community, a place to belong. They had been rejected and dismissed, and told that their lives did not matter, and they had responded not with vengeance, but with strength, not with hatred, but with hope, not with the desire to dominate, but with the determination to protect. That was the true lesson of the Battle of Kepler 442b. That was the legacy humanity would leave among the stars, not fire. Though they had proven they could burn brighter than any sun, not fear. Though the galaxy would remember what they had done for 10,000 years, but something simpler and more profound: the knowledge that even the smallest voice deserved to be heard, the understanding that strength without compassion was meaningless, the belief that the universe was vast enough for all who wished to explore it in peace. Elena Vasquez stood in the council chamber where she had once been rejected, looking out at the gathered delegates who now regarded humanity with a mixture of respect and wonder. She thought of the colonists on Kepler 442b, safe in their homes. She thought of the species who had reached out to Earth, finding hope where they had expected to find only another empire. She thought of Admiral Chun and the warriors who had been willing to become monsters so that others could remain human, and she smiled. The Galactic Council ignored Earth's words, she said softly, to no one in particular, and humanity responded in fire. But that was never who we wanted to be. It was only who we had to become. She turned away from the window and walked toward the future. Behind her, the stars burned on, witnesses to the birth of something new, something that the galaxy had never seen before, something that gave even the oldest and wisest beings reason to hope. Humanity had arrived, and nothing would ever be the same again.